Oi, what's the best game where you get to eat pie? What's the best game where you play a dead guy? Aye, you'll find out in VG247's podcast. Here, what's the best game where you swing from a roof? And what's the best game where you batter the Pope? Assassin's Creed 2. Like I said, you will find out in this here podcast. Hello and welcome to VG247's Best Games Ever podcast, where we attempt to find the best game within an extremely specific category. For example, this week, we're looking for the best game that suffered from bloating. How you interpret the word bloating is where the game is. But joining me to discuss that is Editor-in-Chief Tom Orry.
Hello, I am suffering from Christmas bloat a bit.
Yeah,
still.
I think this is a topic you came up with.
The problem is you have a pudding after every meal at Christmas, don't you? Like
well, you don't have
pudding,
to. That's just a choice that you made, Tom.
Lunch pudding, dinner pudding, snack pudding.
It's the fucking quality streak that gets me. I end up like, I feel, I get to the end of the day and I'm like, oh, I feel all a bit clammy and stiff and a bit like, but I haven't eaten that much. And I think, yeah, no, you haven't. You've eaten normally, except for the fucking 5 handfuls of quality streak that you've just been grazing every 15 minutes. So,
I've still got a Yule log. I've still got one little bit of Yule log, just the end piece left. But it's probably going down later today, I think.
Yeah.
I got a bunch of Stollen just like in a box somewhere.
You got Stollen?
Yeah.
Oh, I ate Stollen really early. I regretted it that I didn't have any left over Christmas.
It feels kind of wrong to eat it now.
No, I'll have it. Send it to me.
Sure.
Yeah, we've still got 2 panettones left.
Oh.
So, yeah, it's a hard life, isn't it? Also joined by Associate Editor Alex Donaldson.
Hello.
And Staff Writer Connor Macker. I'm not going to call you Daft Connor this time. It's a new year.
You got to hear his pick before you call him.
It though.
I was having my cake and eating it too there, but it's a new day. It's a new year, so we're going to drop the Daft Connor thing now because I've decided it's too mean. And it was meant to be a hand puppets comedy insult, and then it just became
just the thing we said.
And then it just became your name.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, cool. So, best game that suffered from bloating. As you came up with the topic, Tom, no doubt, feeling.
I came up with this.
Yeah, you came up with that. Best game that suffered from bloating.
I was going to say it's another terrible topic, but I can't, can I? Because
it was you that suggested this one, and I think because you had just eaten once again, like your third pudding of the day.
It was Christmas related.
Yeah. So, what have you got for us?
Right. So it's a terrible topic. I struggled to think of anything that would work for this because I didn't want to go the obvious, like, it's a Ubisoft game. Ubisoft games are always full of bloat, aren't they? Oh, look, towers. So I thought, no, let's not do that. I thought, let's focus on the best game angle of the podcast and work backwards. So I was like trawling for hours through the best games of all time lists, days even. I went through looking for it and I thought, right, you know what? Breath of the Wild. Full of bloat, right?
For God's sake.
So,
Tom,
let's just listen to this argument first, Alex, shall we, before we go off on one about it. But look. So, first of all, the shrines, right? The shrines, right? These things are quite boring after a while. They're just full of them. Like, let's go to another shrine. Oh, look, I'm going to move a ball in the air, throw it somewhere. It's going to roll down a thing. Oh, there's another one. Oh, I'm going to go and move a thing. Going to move something up. I'm going to teleport myself up using some rocks that come out of the ground or whatever you can do in Breath of the Wild. Bit dull, bit boring. I've done it a few times. That's it. I don't want to do another 50 of them. Bloat, right? The what are they called? Korok seeds, is it? I can't remember what they're called. There's a billion of them in this game. There's probably not. It's like, I don't know, nearly 1,000. I can't remember how many there are. There's a lot of them. And you have to do like really tedious things to get them all. It's like, I don't know how many different ways you get these seeds, but most of them are like, move a thing, shoot a tree, and do that like 300 times a piece. Bloat, right? Bloat. How many weapons are in this game that just break? Bloat.
Well, that's why there's lots of weapons.
Loads of weapons just lying around, bloating the world.
Because it's better to have that. Yeah, but the weapons, so many weapons, and the fact that they break are to linked
weapons,
things, because
the weapons was a thing I threw in just as a joke because I knew you'd get off go off on one.
The idea is that you are constantly picking up new stuff and forced to experiment.
Yeah.
With the bloated lineup of weapons, yeah. Loads of weapons.
I can't believe you picked this when you're the man who has a son who is like 100%ed Mario Odyssey with all
Odyssey
those.
Is not bloat. Odyssey is like the perfect amount of stuff. It's like constantly, here's a thing to do, here's a thing to do, here's a thing to do. I don't think it's not bloat.
I'm not convinced those moon puzzles are really very different to the Korok puzzles.
Yeah, but they're presented differently. Korok puzzles are well boring. And it's like, I got to like a few hundreds, like I'm done. I just can't be bothered anymore.
Isn't the implication that you're picking the Korok seeds out of their shite as well?
That makes it worse, yeah.
I think, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's right.
So there we go.
Just throwing that in there as a Jim Trinker special.
Yeah, so there we go. I've got nothing else to say about this really, other than it's clearly one of the best games of all time still. But some of the stuff you do, it's just a bit
remember the reward
bloaty.
for picking up the Korok seeds is a poo. It's a golden poo.
Right.
It doesn't actually do anything as well.
To be fair, it's not a bad reward, is it?
That's actually
It's kind
pulled
of
it back,
perfect.
yeah.
It's perfect.
You might
kinda.
have fucked this, Tom.
It's exactly what people who would go out of their way to get them all kind of deserve, right? It's like a meaningless pile of shit, right?
That sounds like a commentary on collectibles.
I've always wondered. I've put a link in the thing. You know, you'll have to Google it if you're listening. But genuinely, I've always wondered if that was the purpose of the reward being a turd, where the icon looks like it's a golden turd,
Right.
but it's a turd.
Yeah, because you have to collect all 900 Korok seeds.
It's just too much, right? It's ridiculous.
It serves no purpose. Unbelievable. Like, yeah, there's got to be some kind of commentary on the state of open world.
So
tropes,
it's clever
isn't it?
bloats, they get away with it. It's deliberate. It's like when people say it was deliberately bad. That wasn't, it's just shit.
It's like when Tarantino and Rodriguez did those grindhouse films, and everyone was like, "Well, these are fucking shite," and they were, "Oh, but the point is that they're rubbish." It's like, aye, but the end result is still like toilet, innit? Anyway, yes, all right, I understand. I'm not entirely sure that Breath of the Wild is particularly bloated, because one of the standing sort of bits of praise that game gets all the time is that it takes that open world formula and makes it mean something and makes it a bit
I
lean.
like the open world. I don't like the shrines. The shrines are just get dull. They just get very dull.
But it's always giving you it's always challenging you, your inventiveness, your creativity, whereas
I haven't got any inventiveness or creativity.
all right, moving on. Alex, what have you got for us?
I'm changing my pick, actually.
Oh my god!
Unbelievable, you're not allowed to do that.
Well, there's been a
Unbelievable.
precedent set because you allowed it before, so it's too late now.
I messed up.
But I was, because after I sent you the text, because I sent it in a bleary-eyed state this morning, and then I was thinking about, I was going through some stuff that needs to happen this month, and there's some games coming back out. And so I've got to pick one of them, I know. So let's just, for the sake of argument, pick Persona 4 Golden. But it applies to all of the Persona games where Atlas do this really fucking annoying thing where they have a perfectly good 60-hour, sometimes 70-hour Japanese RPG, a very meaty game. And then, so they did Persona 4, and I firmly believe Persona 4 is, it's got its problems, but it's one of the best JRPGs and more traditional JRPGs of the last 20 years. And then Persona 5 as well, which is very much just a continuation of what they did in 4, also truly incredible. I think which one of those two you prefer is a bit of a toss-up, and 3 is also really good, to be fair. But then in every instance, least egregious with the third game, actually. The third game, they did something a little bit different. But with Persona 4 and Persona 5, they put these games out, they get scores of 10 out of 10s, and then they go, we're going to do this expanded release that's like a director's cut. And it's always just a load of unnecessary shite. yeah, like they just add, you know, they add a lot of the stuff you would expect. So it's like, oh, there's more animated cutscenes, fine. But then it's like, oh, we already had hundreds of personas. Now we're going to add more personas. You know, this Persona is a game that takes place over a calendar year. So it's a bit like, if you haven't played one, the only other game I can think of, I'm sure there's many, but the one that first comes to mind is it's like that Shenmue structure. So you can do a certain amount in a day, and then at the end of the day, you're forced to go back home and go to bed, and then you wake up, then it's the next day. And then it's like, so what they try to do for the most part is cram a load of extra content, but the game calendar usually doesn't change that much. They might add a bit on at the end. So it's like they just give you loads more shit to worry about and to do in the same amount of in-game time. But also, despite being the same amount of in-game time, it just stretches this 70-hour game to... Persona 5 Royal is well over 100 hours. It's just an absolute piss take. It does not respect your time at all. And it just... I think the reason why I wanted to switch from my other pick, which I think was fairly obvious, and I originally had a pick that was quite demonstrative of the general industry, like it was demonstrative of the obvious case of this in the industry, like the really obvious case. And I could have picked any game in that realm, because I think open world games with icon vomit, where you just open the map and you just get stressed. And I could talk about endless games for that. I could talk about stuff like Assassin's Creed. I think Ubisoft are the kings of it, right? Like even the Crew, a racing game, they managed to have that awful icon vomit, and you go to a whatever it was in the Crew, like a radio point, and you interact with it, and then it just fills the map with stuff, and you're like, oh. But then that spreads to other games, because I remember having the same feeling of like, this is just getting stupid now with recent Forza Horizon games. Mm-hmm. So I could have picked
even
stuff
in
like
Breath of the Wild.
It is, but I think the open worlds that do that stuff well, there's just something different in the way they frame it. And so your Skyrims, your Breath of the Wild, your Witcher 3s, that's what makes those the best open world games on the market. But I was like, okay, but that's obvious. And that stuff annoys me, but it doesn't stop me from enjoying those games. Like, I've completed plenty of those Assassin's Creed games. At some point, I just start to ignore a lot of the icons. However, the Persona stuff actually really racks me off, because it takes these wonderful games, and it's like, I was having this conversation with someone the other day, because obviously they're releasing Persona 3 and Persona 4 Golden, Persona 3 Portable, and Persona 4 Golden on Nintendo Switch, and 3 is coming to PC for the first time, and they're both coming to Xbox for the first time, and both coming to PlayStation for the first time. And I was chatting to someone about how there isn't really a definitive version of Persona 4, one of the best games of all time, or at least one of the best games definitely I would say it's in the top 25 games ever, maybe the top 20. But there's no definitive version, because the original version is like better paced and just respects your time more, and the story just flows better and all that sort of stuff. But there's so many quality of life improvements in Golden that you cannot go back to the original once you've experienced Golden, even though Golden has got all this gardening bullshit and bug catching and unnecessary costumes that are nothing to do with the story, and like crowbars in crappy Halloween events and a skiing trip, because it's just like, the whole point of Persona 4 is like, you're a small town kids. In a small town, you have one visit to the big city, where actually you visit the school from Persona 3, so they sort of make it's a nice little crossover. Yeah. But the whole point is that you're small town kids, and it's about the boredom, and it's sort of got these Scooby-Doo vibes of when you live in this tiny town where everyone knows everyone. And then in the fucking... in Golden, they then just add all this, like, let's go on a skiing trip. Let's go on holiday. I can't really remember, because I'm so annoyed about it. It's sort of all left my mind, but I'm pretty sure in Persona 5, the version of that is they go to Hawaii. And it's just like, fuck off. It's terrible. So that's my pick, because it really annoys me, because it becomes this thing of, if there was a toggle in these games to turn off certain bits of the new stuff and keep other bits, it'd be like, you could create one of the best Japanese RPGs of all time. But because all the quality of life improvements that are smart are attached to all this other unnecessary shit, which is basically a way of justifying getting people to buy the same game again at full price. It's annoying. I hate it. And that's why I had to change, because the more I thought about it, the more angry I got.
Yeah. That's really good. I think because it's added value, or at least perceived to be added value, that actually just ruins the pacing, destroys the flow of the game. But as you say, it's attached to the quality of life improvements. So it's such a poison chalice.
You know what it is? It's that dance scene that got added to Return of the Jedi with the CG guy going what and all that. It's that scene in video game form, except it's not a 5-minute scene added. It's like 10, 12, 15 hours of stuff.
Yeah. There we go. Yeah.
But it is a JRPG and therefore boring.
I guess the idea is that people love these characters, so let's go take them to Hawaii or whatever. But you're right; it seems like it's just
but that's what they used to do. That's like fucking when On the Buses gets a movie.
Yeah.
It is actually legitimately that as well, right? Though, because when you have a successful sitcom and you get given the budget to make a movie on British movie budgets, so quite cheap.
What do you do?
You do In-Betweeners movie, you go to Magaluf, you do basically you just take it abroad.
I couldn't believe it when people just do nothing, like that BBC Three sitcom. They did a movie where they go to Japan. It's like every single British sitcom does this. Don't British sitcomify your RPG. So, all right, okay. Now, Connor, what have you got for us?
Well, I've also picked an RPG. Mm-hmm. I have picked a game that I played a while back, really, really liked when I first booted it up, really, really enjoyed it. But I think due to the sheer amount of just stat added onto it, I couldn't even finish it. I just became so uninterested with it. And that's Final Fantasy 15.
Oh, yeah.
I remember when the first few hours of Final Fantasy 15, I actually really dug it. Because the basic selling point for me of that game is that you get these 4 kind of likable characters and are on this big adventure. And a lot of the glue that kind of keeps the game together is their interactions with each other. Mm-hmm. So you'll start a camp and you start chatting, and during combat they have these quips, and you kind of get a feeling of their relationship, and it gets better and better throughout the game. But the problem is there's just so much I remember getting so bogged down with these bounty hunts, with these little go out and kill these monster side quests and all these other little exploratory sort of side missions that distract from this core story that I found quite enjoyable in Final Fantasy games. That by the time I was dozens of hours in, sort of the charm of this game kind of fell off. Usually when a game has a lot of side tap to do, I'll be okay, this is a podcast game. Mm-hmm. Unless I'm reviewing it, which I guess I never do this. Where I'll stick on some music or a podcast and I just get through it, right? I just trudge through the kill 5 horses or whatever, defeat a dragon out in the wild or whatever.
Mm-hmm. What game asked you to kill horses?
I can't think of a single one.
It's what came to mind anyway for some reason.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess
killing horses is such a taboo, isn't it?
Yeah, I literally can't.
If you do it in Red Dead Redemption, everyone's just it's the worst reputation killer.
It's just awful.
Yeah,
but usually if I was playing WoW, for example, and I'm doing a bunch of meaningless shite, I'll stick on a podcast. But because of how tied side by side all these character interactions that are generally quite great with just standard gameplay in 15, I felt I couldn't do that because I'm missing out on the bit I really like. And I the main story's full of that, the side quests are full of that. But what that meant is that I just got so, it kind of wore me down. And by the time you leave the first main map, after, this is going to be really cringy to Final Fantasy fans, but I don't this big, after you go to this water place and there's this, I think it's Leviathan, there's this big summon, this big water dragon.
That's the point at which the game flips, right? That's the point at which the game stops being an open world game and becomes this really weird linear.
Yeah, and that sucks because I got to that and I was I'm done with this. I can't do any more side quests. I'm so bored.
And there aren't any after that point.
And there aren't any after that. I got to the point where the game would probably, funnily enough, be all right with me. But at that point, I had invested so much time into it that I was like, I've got my, I've got what I wanted out of it. I'm kind of done. It's a sort of problem that I didn't have with The Witcher 3, because all of the side stuff in The Witcher 3 is kind of, I don't know, like it feels less just thrown in.
I will say, I don't think this is a bad pick. What I'd say is, I think it's an interesting pick, but I don't think it's quite right to me anyway, in the sense that I think that FF15, the problem that it has is that it's actually not bloat as much as it is a lack of good stuff, by which I mean, in that open world, by which I mean it's got probably the same amount, I would say probably less, of that sort of busy work, side quest stuff than your average Ubisoft game, or even a game like The Witcher 3. But the problem is, that's all there is. And aside from the story, there isn't really any meaty side stuff to get your teeth into. And I think that's the difference. If you're doing that busy work, you're doing hunts and stuff, or if that the difference between this and Final Fantasy 12, right? Because 12 had a lot of hunts and stuff. If you're doing hunts and stuff in between doing these side quests that have story and world building and meaning and purpose, then you sort of accept it a bit more. But when that is all that you're doing, it becomes deeply depressing very, very quickly. And then the other time it becomes deeply depressing is when that stuff just massively outnumbers the stories, the stuff that has meaning, which is the Ubisoft problem. They have the story stuff and the meaningful side quest, but then they have so much of the busy work. And so that's because when I think bloat, I think an overstuffed world or something with too much in it. I actually think that what a Final Fantasy 15 is, the biggest downfall of it is that it's quite empty.
Not bloated. There we go. Done.
But like, it kind of, you could make an argument that like it's empty, and to make it feel like there's actually a reason to explore this open world, they shove in a bunch of like hunts, right?
Yeah.
Like I remember finishing up at the petrol station, which is I think the first place you go to when you push your car in, and I do all the like quests there, and I'm ready to move on, and there's just a bunch of hunts that I can do that are kind of like, okay, no, but before you leave this little mini zone, how about you actually look around it for a bit and kill some dragons or whatever. I feel like it's just needless, and it's inserted. I feel like if it's like a sort of gameplay if it's missions inserted into the game to make you actually explore the world, then it's kind of bloating itself up just to justify itself. And I think that's kind of naff.
Does it lose sight of the fact that it is a road trip after the point where it becomes like really linear?
No, well, no, because the second half of the road trip it takes place on a train, basically. So you're still sort of going through the world, and it's like you stop and have an overnight, and then you get back on and you stop and have an overnight. And rather than the boys in the car, it becomes the boys in the train. And there's a really weird thematic shift where when they're in the car's open air and it's less claustrophobic and they're friendly. And as things get more real and they're in the enclosed encounters of the train carriages, they begin to hate each other a little bit. It's quite interesting, actually, story-wise.
I feel like I would have loved that. It's just a really weird combination of like this kind of meaningless gameplay and a game with characters I genuinely didn't want to just put on some like history podcast on and ignore, which meant I was just like dead-eyed, like totally bored with it.
Yeah, I get it.
It sucks.
I mean, I didn't play a lot of Final Fantasy 15, but I really enjoyed the road trip aspect. But like, because it's a Final Fantasy game, and I find Final Fantasy games so obtuse and fiddly, and there's lots of stuff in them that you would quite like to do, but you have to understand some arcane system in order to be able to do it. And I bounced off that side of things, but I liked it when they were all like cutting about in the car and eating noodles and that.
It's the best bit, yeah.
Right, so I'm gonna play that jingle now. I like every pitch here once again. Tom, I'm not convinced that Breath of the Wild, although it is probably the best game that's been mentioned, I'm not convinced that it's that bloated. I don't think it is.
Have you done all the shrines? You done all the shrines?
No.
No.
I did do them all. I 100%ed it.
Yeah. I don't think it is that bloated, and I think because it keeps throwing, because the game has that Nintendo thing where it's just, it very rarely recycles the same idea, and it's constantly, as we said before, challenging your creativity as a player. I don't think it counts as bloat, and I think the Korok seeds are just funny. I love that you collect 900 of them and get handed a turd, and it's got to be a commentary on basically open world design. Very spicy for a Nintendo game, so I like that. So I'm not accepting that as an example of bloat, and I'm not accepting the weapon system as an example of bloat, given that
It's not the
whole
system.
thing.
It's just the amount of weapons.
Yeah, but it
bloats the world.
But it
all
doesn't
those
bloat.
weapons. Imagine how many weapons are lying around.
It's not bloat, because it would be bloat if it forced you to. It would be bloat if the weapon degradation mechanic was there and every single sword was exactly the same. Like for example, in Skyrim, there's like 5 swords. That generally there are a lot of kind of special ones that you can go and find, but I don't think it's bloat because it's just designed once again to constantly challenge you as a player. So I don't think that's bored. I don't think that's bloat. I think that is I think the equivalent bloat would be something like Borderlands, where they've got this procedural generation system and there's 5 billion weapons in the game and they're all shit. Frankly, Tom, I think you're wrong.
I bet if Borderlands was made by Nintendo, you'd love it. You'd love all those weapons, all those amazing weapons that challenge you every time you pick one up.
No, because I gave my Switch to my 9-year-old because I can't stand Nintendo games. It's not about that. You can't get me on that. Connor, I played Final Fantasy 15, as I said, for quite a lot. And I don't know. I'm not sure it was that bloated. I think I was struggling to empathize with how you felt about it, because I thought it was, for a Final Fantasy game, at least that first open world bit, I thought it was fairly lean, wasn't it? And,
I think if you stop by every single hub and do all the bounty missions, it's the most miserable thing in the world, and it makes you want to move on. Admittedly, that's self-imposed. But still, it sucks.
Like I said, I didn't get to the point where they're on a train and they're all depressed, which sounds amazing. I really feel like I want to go and spin that up now, because I love the idea of them all just sort of, it starts off as like a really cool kind of like California road trip, and then it turns into like an episode of Bottom. So
you got to keep in mind, spoilers. I won't spoil it, but something horrible happens in between.
I like that. So yeah, I need to find out why it becomes a slog for them. So I need to get that back on. But I do take your point, though, that even if, as you say, it is self-imposed, the fact that the content is there, and if you're the sort of person who has a bit of a completionist attitude, it's a nightmare.
But what if you got given a poo at the end of it? You collect all of them, you got a poo. Suddenly, it's the best thing ever, isn't it?
Maybe that's what depressed him on the train.
I'm very much torn between Connor and Alex's, but I'm gonna give it to Alex, and the main differentiator is that, well, the fact that the bloat is like added on later and took a very well paced and balanced game by the sounds of it, and pretty much put the balance out of whack and kind of ruined it, but also improved the quality of life stuff to a point where it's impossible to go back. It feels like a form of torture, and something about that appeals to me. I mean, not appeals to me, but as a story, it appeals to me. And Alex just got really angry about it.
It does annoy me.
Persona 4 Golden, did you say?
Yeah, let's call it Persona 4 God. It could be Persona 5 Royal as well.
I mean, there's 500 of these games, but all right. Persona 4 Golden is the best game that's a bit bloated, but yeah, I would say that Final Fantasy 15 is also a really good choice, and Breath of the Wild is a bad one. So it was a tie. It was a neck and neck.
I don't really care. I don't really care. I'm just going to go and eat a load of my mince pies I've got left.
I'm just wanting to trigger a load of like Tom Ori was robbed complaints again, because those were great. All right, okay, well, thanks very much for that. And yeah, Persona 4 Golden is the best game that's full of bloat. I've decided, and that's the end of it. See you later.
Like I said, you will find out in this here podcast.
If you enjoyed the show, please give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. It really helps us get the word out. We're not just a podcast, of course. If you'd like to hear more from the team, then check out VG247.com for our fantastic news coverage, features, reviews, and game guides. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.